Hey guys, it's Pia here. Welcome to a very special little video, which is going to be very different from what I normally do because this is going to be a book review. It's something I've never done on a YouTube video, so I'm not entirely sure how to do this the best way, but this arrived on Thursday and it was very exciting because this was actually my Christmas present for myself. And so, as I said, it arrived on Thursday and I finished it yesterday, so Friday night. Which obviously means that I read it in one day because it was a very good book. However, this review is not going to be just about me talking about how great this book is and how amazing Scott is and all that. I'm actually going to try to make a very realistic review of what I actually thought of the book without gushing too much about it and without being too much of a fangirl. But so I'm just going to start off by telling you really shortly about the story in the book. It's not about the animatronics in the restaurant coming up with shenanigans and all that. It's actually about a main character called Charlie. She is the daughter of the guy who was the owner of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, which is the location in the first game of Five Nights at Freddy's. And he was also the guy who designed the animatronics. So he was this engineering person who made all these animatronics, and we get a nice little insight into Charlie's life as the daughter of the owner of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. And a lot of the book is actually about her memories about the place and about the animatronics and all that. So it's very nostalgic, and it's very nice to read those things because it kind of gives you more of a feel of what Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria was before all of the horrible things happened. But so, speaking of horrible things, something happened to Charlie and her friends in a Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria when they were about 6 or 7 years old. And this book takes place 10 years later, when all of the friends are reunited in the city where they used to live, where Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria used to be. And they are reunited because the school that they went to is hosting a memorial for the horrible thing that happened 10 years ago. And as the friends meet again, they all get very curious to see if Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria is still there, and that is actually pretty much what it says here on the back cover, so I didn't spoil anything in case you were afraid of me doing that. I'm also not going to spoil anything anymore. This is all I'm going to say, that's pretty much what the synopsis is, and I'm going to get to my opinions now, which is obviously the most fun part for me. So obviously, as you guys might know, I'm a huge fan of Five Nights at Freddy's. I've made customs based on the characters. I have plushies from them. Well, you can see here. Eee. I have these amazing plushies that I bought from a very talented plush maker. I'm also wearing my Let's Eat shirt. So, you know, I am a fangirl, a very hardcore fangirl. But I do have a few criticisms about the book anyway. But I'm going to start from the positives because it's always more fun to talk about what was good in a book and then get to the really negative parts. Well, there weren't that many negative parts, to be honest, but obviously, as I said, it's a very good book because I wouldn't have read it in one day if it was boring. I'm not a huge book reader, so I did like it a lot. Good parts are that, as I said, the story from Charlie's perspective gives a very nice insight into what Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria used to be like before everything happened. It gives you nice insights about what her dad was thinking of when he was designing these animatronics and stuff like that. It gives a lot of insight and a lot of a nice kind of backstory to something that was just a horror game, so it's great. And I also think that this is going to be a very good transition from having, you know, Five Nights at Freddy's as just the horror games to something that can actually be adapted into a movie, which they are doing currently. So it was a nice little thing, and the story works well in that sense that, you know, from kind of seeing everything from her perspective, I think it works very well. In the beginning of the book, the pacing is very good. It gets into action very quickly, much quicker than I actually thought it would, so plus points for that. A few of the characters are very well established. I like that. A few of the scenes that are more like horror-esque are also very nice, so big plus points for that. However, now onto the less positive points. The pacing of the book, as I said, it was good in the beginning, but it does go very much up and down throughout the book. It's kind of odd to me that at some points, like, it's reaching this thing that you're almost thinking like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the end game and we're going to be reading like all these horrible things happening, and then it kind of just falls flat after a while. It's really hard to explain without spoiling anything, but it's the pacing of the book is very odd. Also, I felt like, because as I said, this is about Charlie and her friends, she has a large group of friends, and some of the characters were just kind of unnecessary to me. I didn't really see why they had to be so many, and some of the characters weren't even well established, so it's kind of hard for me to understand like what Scott was going for, why were they that many of the characters, but you know, it is what it is. So also, speaking of the main character, as much as I love the way that she kind of is traumatized and she's kind of remembering these things bit by bit that happened to her, there was just something about Charlie that didn't really connect with me. It didn't feel like she was a real person. It more felt like she was just this viewer. It could be anyone, except for her like childhood memories and all that, obviously made for a very specific character, but she didn't feel like I knew her at the end of the book, which is very sad, because I think many characters, if you have a main character, they have to be strong, and they have to, they just have to have a certain qualities to their personality that are memorable, and to me Charlie wasn't terribly memorable, unfortunately. The ending of the book was slightly odd. I've read many reviews. I was a bit worried about this when I started reading the book, and I do have to say that the ending of the book is quite strange. I agree with the reviews. I'm not going to say anything about that because obviously I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, the ending was slightly odd. One thing that I really liked about the book was that it's very easy to read it. It looks like a big book, but it's actually, I mean, the font is big, and okay, I'm not gonna spoil too much, sorry. The font is big, and you can see that like there's a lot of space in between these sentences, so it is very easy to read the book in one sitting. It's not a very heavy book in any sense. The language isn't difficult to understand. It does have a few like technical words here and there, but it's nothing that's like makes it hard to read in any way. And speaking of language, there were a few very silly typos, or not even typos, but just grammatical errors that, I mean, I'm not even native speaking. I think it could have been proofread maybe once or twice more just to kind of not have those errors in it, because they were very silly, and some of them were in parts where you were like getting into the mood and like, oh, this is intense, and then there's like this very silly grammatical error, and it's just like, oh, I mean, you know. But yeah, that's just a very small thing. It was just a few parts in the book, but it did kind of irritate me a little bit. As a final summary, I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who loves Five Nights at Freddy's, because it doesn't touch much on the lore other than the first game and the things that happened in the first game, the backstory of that. It's the only thing that it touches on. It doesn't talk at all about like things from Five Nights at Freddy's 2, or, you know, even the characters from Five Nights at Freddy's 2 are not in this book, so don't expect that. But it is a nice story that centers around the first game, so if Scott comes out with another book, then I hope that it's going to be another story that's centered around maybe another location, because this one felt like I kind of saw everything that had to be seen, or like there wasn't a lot more to the story than what was written here, I think. So yeah, it doesn't answer a lot of questions in terms of all the theorizing. Like, if you're a fan of the game theorists, they obviously have these amazing theories about what happens in all the games, and I can tell you that this doesn't answer almost any of those. But it does, it's a good story, and as Scott said when he released this book, he said that sometimes the lore gets so complicated that it's very hard to tell a story, so this should be viewed as something outside of that very complicated lore from the games. So seeing this as an independent story from the games, it's good. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who hasn't played the game or knows what the game is about, because I think that it would get very confusing for them, but I would recommend it to anyone who is a fan of the games. So, as a summary, me as a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, love it, but I'm probably not going to read it again because it wasn't that great. So I'm looking forward to seeing if Scott comes out with something else. I think he said that there might be another book coming out at some point. Definitely will read that, but I still think that no one should expect too much from these books, because they're just stories that are kind of independent from the games. With that, sorry for this very long video. I was just excited to talk about this book, and I hope that you guys are having an amazing weekend, and see you again tomorrow. Bye!